listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome into a new episode of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. I'm Grace Remington, here to recap all of the action in NFL's Week 5. We had overtime. We had bad coaching. There are quarterback controversies. We had high-scoring and low-scoring affairs. We're going to get to all of the games here on the GM Shuffle. But, Michael, we're starting with the most exciting game of the weekend. Ravens and Bengals taking this one to overtime, or the Ravens win the thriller 41-38. But this game ultimately coming down to some bad play calling by Zach Taylor. What went wrong for him at the end of the game there?
Well, one of the things that just strikes me, Grace, so weirdly is the fact that these coaching salaries have gone up and their management of games have gone down. I mean, what bothers me most is they don't pay attention to the game. They have nobody in their ears saying, this is really the flow of the game. This is how the game is going. And I think the most perfect example is Zach Taylor watched his defense give up 14 first downs in the fourth quarter alone. Now, they had 30 in the game, the Ravens, but they got 14. Almost half of their first downs occurred in the fourth quarter when he had two 10-point leads. And the fact that when Tucker made that field goal into that closed end zone of the stadium, the wind was swirling. Now, when McPherson went to set it up, it wasn't. But you had to believe that there is something called getting in field goal range and getting in makeable field goal range, right? Now, look, we've gotten lured into thinking about all these 50-yarders, and certainly McPherson's a really good kicker. But I don't want to put the risk, because if I don't make the kick, I'm losing the game. I want to make the kick, so I want to make goddamn certain I'm going to make the kick. I don't want to leave it to a 52-yard field goal. It's got to be absurd. He couldn't run the ball all day. He could throw it. Now, he threw it on 1st and 15 in the game, and he got intercepted. So maybe he got spooked. But the whole day, he's torching this Ravens secondary like it's nobody's business. And he needed to score a touchdown, and he runs Chad Brown 3 times into the line, and then he says, kick the ball. So now the kicker looks like the GOAT, and he looks like, well, I was just managing the game. No, you weren't. What did you do? You did nothing. You were horrendous. Like, at some point as a head coach, you got to understand what's going on with the game. And that game to me was, as soon as, I'm sitting on the couch watching the game with Millie, and it was driving me crazy because, for full disclosure, I picked Cincinnati in my Russo contest. And Russo, acting as cocky as he could be, he picked Baltimore. We never, ever pick the same game. Usually we stay away from the same game, but he's feeling his oats, and, I'm going to take Baltimore. And I'm sitting there watching the game. I got 2 10-point leads, but when I'm watching the game, I could tell that CINCY was never in control of the game, even with a 10-point lead. They never were in control. When John Harbaugh tried his 52-yard field goal, I thought that was a mistake because Tucker hadn't been very good. But Zach Taylor's not watching the game. Like, he's not watching. He had 2 10-point leads that evaporated. And he goes ahead and he gets in field. No, you can't do that. To me, this one's completely on him, and I think their season is lost and gone. I mean, they're not going to win the North, and they're certainly not going to beat another good team with that shitty defense that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when asked about the conservative approach on that drive after the game, Zach Taylor said he didn't want to risk a sack or a holding penalty in that situation. I feel like if you're playing it that safe, especially with an offense.
No.
Right?
There's more holding calls. There's more calls on run plays than there are on pass plays. Like, that's a horseshit excuse. There's more holding calls on run plays than there are on pass plays. And if you run a 3-step drop or you just get the ball out, you got to try to make a play. Look, if you got to punt the ball back to them and pin them back up, that's a hell of a lot better than giving them the ball at midfield. I mean, that's a hell of a lot better. I mean, you can't all of a sudden he's going to coach conservatively. Well, I didn't want to get a holding call. Bullshit. I mean, what they called one holding in the game? I mean, that's a horrible excuse. You got to throw the ball. That's how you win games. You can't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball the whole day.
I know. I feel like if you're going to play it that safe, you might as well just take a knee to avoid a fumble as well. Just tack that in with the list of excuses. But not a pretty ending for them. So the Bengals now 1-4 on the season. Only 5.6% of teams ever who have started the year 1-4 have reached the postseason. So odds not in their favor. Look, they have the Giants next.
Yeah, I
Is
thought
it fair to
Burrow
say
was
the
right
season is
after the
over
game.
now?
Well,
Go
no, it's
ahead.
nothing's ever over. They could put together. I mean,
Mhm.
offensively, they found their rhythm, especially throwing the football. The season's never over, but to me, the reality of the situation is their defense is the reason the season could be over. They can't stop anybody.
Mhm.
I mean, they're not going to look. Daniel Jones was very good yesterday in Seattle. He moved the ball. They ran Daniel Jones quite a bit, even without their star receiver neighbors. They were very effective offensively. Give them props. I thought it was a great game plan by the Giants. They went out there, they played well. They showed mental toughness in the game. Do I think they're any good? No. But I think they played as well as they could play, and they found a way. The game should have gone to overtime, except Isaiah Simmons did the Jamie Collins jump over. Their special teams coach used to be in New England. And so he did the jump over, and Simmons made the block. So great play, great call by them. But I think to me, you can't play defense as badly as Cincinnati does and think you're going anywhere. Same thing with Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore can't play pass defense. They have no ability. I mean, people are torching them left and right. They don't get rush. And so when they get into a game against a good passing team, it's going to be hard. Now, we're week 5, you got a chance to fix them. But since he hasn't gotten theirs fixed all year, I mean, Carolina even moved the ball on them. Everybody moved the ball on them. And there's a game that you have a chance to win, but because they have no running game and they can't run the ball at the end of the game and they can't play pass defense, they're really stuck. So forget about looking at the
Mhm.
schedule. Every game moving forward is going to be hard. The Giant game is going to be hard. Now they got to win with their offense. That's the only thing they can do, which is what you should figure out if you're Zach Taylor and you go ahead and you don't throw it on the down. You got to throw it. You just let a game slip away. I mean, he's had 2 games he
Mhm.
just lost there. If he beats Kansas City and Kansas City and wins this game, he's 3-2.
Yeah, Jamar Chase kind of hinted at it at the end of the game, and I'm paraphrasing this, but he essentially said, "You score 35 points, you end the game with the ball in your hand. You expect to win that one."
Of course
Clearly,
you
the
do.
offense, Joe Burrow did everything they can. Yeah, but that wasn't the only game that had bad play calling to end the game. Bills-Texans came down to Sean McDermott making some interesting choices at the end of the game as well. What'd you think about that one?
Well, I think both these games really can be summed up that the coaches weren't watching the game. Okay, we know Zach Taylor wasn't paying attention, but Sean McDermott wasn't either. To come out in 2-minute offense with the ball backed up and your quarterback has it, I don't care what anybody says, he looked concussed to me. Like he looked like there was
Mhm.
something wrong. Now he got cleared by independent doctors, so I'll give him credit. But I mean, being cleared and being able to play have always been two different things in my world. And so he completes 9 passes the entire day going into that drive. And now you're going to put the ball in his hands. I mean, you're a good running team. The only thing you've done well all year is run the football, really. I mean, when you look at their passing numbers, they're really atrocious. You look at their third down numbers, they're not very good. So for me, you need Josh Allen. And here's the perfect example of why Buffalo is really not a good team because unless Josh Allen plays at an MVP level, they can't beat anybody. I mean, Houston was putting the game on a silver platter. Once Nico Collins went out, the Houston offense shut down. That game was on a silver platter for the Bills to win, and yet they couldn't win it because at the end of the game, I mean, there's 2 things you want to do, and Sean was right. He's in a really hard spot there. They have 3 timeouts, and you're backed up, so you want a first down. But the number one thing in that situation is we got to take away their timeouts. We got to take away their
Mhm.
timeouts. We can't really. Maybe on third down, if it's close, we run a run pass option. But the first 2 calls there have got to be first downs. We got to push the ball out a little bit to get it out of this end zone so we have a chance to get a first down and get the game and to get the game into overtime. Because if we punt it and they have 3 timeouts, and even if it's 16 seconds, that's 3 plays. That's 3 plays,
Mhm.
right? So that's 3 plays, and you could stop the clock on every one of those plays. So I just think it was horrible. But Sean has never been very good at game management within the game. But all this goes back to watch the freaking game. Are you watching what Josh Allen can't do? I get it if Josh Allen was 100%, but your receivers weren't getting open. I mean, the longest he threw for like 130 in the game. And the longest pass play was the 49-yarder that Coleman went down the sideline, almost stepped out, didn't step out. I mean, it blows my mind that there's no symmetry between the actual game and the decisions at the end of the game. And it goes for
Mhm.
go for it on fourth down. It goes for it, the decision making and play call. Look, I get these guys that that are sitting there with their heads in a goddamn play sheet and they're like this all the time. I get that. But if you're watching the game like McDermott, you're saying, look, something's wrong with my quarterback. He's not 100%. I got to go over and talk to him. Look, on this drive, we got to be really good. Here's what we have to do. We want to get the ball. We want to make sure they don't have a chance. They got a great field goal kicker. He made a 57-yarder in Atlanta last week. We can't let that happen.
Mhm. Yeah, those 3 pass plays at the end of the game only took 11 seconds off the clock. They say every inch counts in football, every second counts too, but
Mhm.
is it possible Sean McDermott totally missed the concussion? I mean, that was scary. Like Josh, if the NFL wants to say they care about player safety, I mean, he looked like he was going to get sick on the sidelines after
Yeah.
slamming his head into the ground.
Well, but then in fairness to Sean, it's out of his hands. That
Uh,
decision goes to the independent neurologist on the sideline, and that guy and the media can make out anything they want. That guy could care less about what anybody thinks. That guy's going to make a decision based on what he thinks, based on his medical practice. So he put him back in. He obviously now he cleared it. See, now the blame comes back to Sean. He clears it, and you're watching him play, and you're saying something's not right with the guy. Something's
mhm.
not right with this guy. He just doesn't
So
look
then,
like the same player. Go ahead.
but then it still comes down to McDermott, right? You have to make the adult decision and kind of
Mhm.
look out for your own guy.
Right, it does, and that's what I'm saying. It comes down to him. I mean, he's not involved with the clearing the play, but he is involved in what the play we do. That's where he's
Mm,
involved, and he's got to say to Joe
mhm.
Brady, Joe, look, I don't think our guy. Let's just get this thing in overtime if we can. Let's run some time off the clock. They're going to call timeout, but at least if we have a running play, we can eat up, 6 seconds per play. That's 18 seconds, and we'll give them the ball back with bad field position and no timeouts.
Hmm. Well, I suppose the good news for the Bills is that the odds makers still like them to win the division. Somehow they are the odds on favorite at minus 250 in what's become a really confusing AFC East. All right, but they weren't the only disappointing loss this weekend. Coming up next, the Jets are jetsing again, and we're breaking it down. This is the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Co. New York, New York. All right, the London game. Well, it was fun if you were a Vikings fan. They are still 5-0 on the season, only undefeated team. Well, besides the Chiefs left. Jets, though, man, Mike, I don't even know how to begin this segment. I'll be honest with you, because they have been so disappointing after all the promise they came in with this season. So you start it. Where do you even begin with this team? How do they fix the problems?
Well, they know what the problem is. I mean, they spent this offseason, they were looking for someone to come in and help Nathaniel Hackett. This offense is broken by design. They talk about all their great skill players that they have. Yesterday they targeted Garrett Wilson 22 times in the game. God, that's wonderful. He averaged 7.8 yards a catch. 7.8 yards a catch. His long play was 16 yards. That's not beating anybody. You're not beating anybody with that. And so to me, we signed Mike Williams. Well, Mike Williams has been hurt. He's got 2 catches for 25 yards. So to me, the Nathaniel Hackett's version of the West Coast offense is prehistoric. It's been that way. It's why he gets attacked with the protections all the time, because they've never. This is like running software back in the early stages of computers. Like, you've got to update the software, man. You just can't keep running the same shit. And so it works, but you got to modify it. You got to change some of the things. And so they're prehistoric in what they're doing offensively, and everybody knows what they're doing. And it's putting the burden of responsibility right on the quarterback. And the fact that they can't run the ball compounds the problem. But that's the
Mhm.
problem of the coaches. Look, running games are designed on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then they're adjusted on Sunday. And if you can't figure out how to run the ball against a certain front, then you got to figure out during the game how to run the ball. But when you have a quarterback, and I don't care if his name's Aaron Rodgers or if it's Sonny Jurgensen or if it's Jim Hart, I don't care who it is. To throw 54 times in a game ain't very good. And then you only got 244 yards. Your longest pass play was 25 yards in the day. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, I want to throw the football too, but if we're dinking and dunking, we're getting nowhere. We're lost but making good
Mhm.
time. And so to me, this Jet team has got to, look, if you're the GM of the Jets who had any real authority, if you're Joe Douglas, you say basically, we need offensive help. We need somebody to come in here and help Nathaniel Hackett. We need a head coach who's going to hold people accountable. How many more people are going to go to the podium and announce there's no accountability in New York where somebody writes a column about Bobby Saleh not being a leader? Like, when is somebody going to say that? I'm the only one who says it. Like, at some point, I mean, I've seen it since day one. The guy's a cheerleader. He's not a leader. I mean, Bobby Saleh just runs up and down. He stands there with this, I ran the steps before the game. How'd that work out for you, Bobby? You're in great shape. You're training for a triathlon. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, you go in there and now they come back and they got to go to Buffalo after Buffalo loses. I mean, look, to
Mhm.
me, I think the season's not over with for the Jets, but they have to correct things that are not easily correctable if you are in a sunk cost fallacy, which is where they are. They're not going to change away from Nathaniel Hackett because that would piss off Rodgers. They don't make any adjustments during the game because Bobby doesn't know how to go tell the assistants we need to figure it out. I mean, it's just an absence of leadership. This is the NFL today. We have head coaches that are not qualified to be a head coach. I mean, I grew up, and I know I'm old, and I don't want to sound like but I saw Joe Gibbs invent football for Washington. I saw Bill Walsh invent football. I saw these great coaches do some remarkable things. Some of these guys are just standing there collecting their $8 million a year and doing nothing.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the plan from the start for them as well, because that's really what it feels like. The Jets started this game with back-to-back 3-and-outs. I don't know how that happens, Michael, when those are supposed to be your scripted drives. I know the Vikings defense is tough, but you're supposed to have somewhat of an advantage there at the start of the game. And then when you have Breece Hall, who I thought would be the second best running back in the league this year, second only to CMC, who's not playing, but one of the top running backs, and then Braylon Allen, who's probably better than Breece Hall. You get Braylon Allen 5 carries, Breece Hall 9 carries, and they're not involved at all.
Well, I mean, this team scored 14 points in the first quarter all year. That's 5 games.
Mhm.
That's less than 3 points a game. But they don't score. Their leading receiver, it's Garrett Wilson, at 8.8 yards per catch. I mean, the longest play is the Lassard play against the blown coverage against the 49ers on opening day. I mean, they average 3.6 yards a carry. They can't get going. They can't make a play. I mean, they can't get anything going. And they've scored as many points. Right now, they've scored 93 points after 5 games, okay? They scored
Mhm.
93 after 5. Last year, Grace, guess how many points they scored? They scored 47 after 5. So they've doubled their production. They've
Okay.
doubled their production. I mean, is that good enough? I don't know. I mean, it looks horrible to me. I mean, in
Well,
week
if you're
5, they
2-3,
scored
it's not good
31
enough.
points. Yeah. In week 5, they scored 31 points against Denver. This team would need to play 80 minutes to score 31 points.
Oof. Mhm. Yeah, and now we're seeing more jawing too between Aaron Rodgers and Nate Hackett. Rodgers, that one clip that went viral, him telling, "Hey man, get the play in," which is interesting because Hackett was his guy, but now we're seeing all this. I mean, it's week by week at this point. There's some viral clip, Michael, of either Rodgers jawing with Hackett or with Saleh. I mean, what kind of influence could Rodgers have in getting one of these guys out early, you think?
Uh, Rodgers, I mean, the offense is who he wants. I mean, that's what he wants to be around. So I think to me,
Mhm.
that's just going to be what it is, right? I think that's exactly what they want. I can't imagine. Look, they haven't changed now. Why are they going to change later? I mean, I think now this lack of offense heightens the Devontae Adams quest. I think Rodgers is in there on Monday screaming for Devontae Adams. I think Joe Douglas is going to have to convince Woody Johnson that he needs to trade for him. And the Jets
Mhm.
know that they need him, and the Raiders know that they need him. And so I think to me, that's really important. And so I think
Mhm.
we're going to see a lot of that come down. Now, can they do it? I don't know. I mean, we still haven't heard from Hassan Riddick. You talk about an absence of leadership. We haven't heard from Hassan Riddick at all.
That's
So
true.
I think to me that's going to be the problem is, and Woody really controls the money. It's one thing to be the GM of the team and have that title, but when you have to go ask somebody for permission to do stuff, you're not the GM. You're not.
Hmm.
It's one thing to tell the owner, this is what we want to do. What do you think? Are you okay on this or what? But it's another thing when you have to go to the owner to get approval to do what you want to do. That's the Jets. Joe doesn't have the authority to do. He can have the authority on all this lower level stuff. He can claim a guy off the waiver wire. He can do this or that, but he can't do anything of substantialness in terms of value that certainly would indicate that he can make a decision. So for me, it's really it comes down to whether Woody wants to do it or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, two bright spots in this spot for Jets fans and Jets backers. Defense is still elite. Of course, Sauce Gardner needs to hold on to those interceptions. If he did so in the end zone, maybe that could have saved the game. But then Aaron Rodgers, this is the first time he's been under 500 through 5 starts since 2012. But in that 2012 season, he led the Packers to an 11-5 record and a postseason appearance. So there's still time to turn this thing around.
But Bobby
Especially
Saleh wasn't there to coach the team. I mean, we can
okay.
make fun of McCarthy. Here's the thing that's interesting. Belichick's only a good coach with Brady. Mike McCarthy was only a good coach with Aaron Rodgers. But why is Bobby Saleh not winning with Aaron Rodgers? Well, is he too old? Is he not good enough? To me, at some point, this marriage of coach to quarterback has to come together. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it as plain as day, right? Kevin Stefanski's won Coach of the Year. He can't coach Deshaun Watson. We can get into that the next block because I want to go off on that. But to me, that you just can't. If you don't have a quarterback, nobody can win without a quarterback. And when you have one, it still takes a good coach to win. All these people think that Mike McCarthy just rolled the ball out there and said, okay, well, Mike McCarthy's made Dak Prescott a better player than the greatest coach of all time, joystick Kellen Moore. But nobody says anything about that because Kellen Moore's in bed with the analytical community, so it's okay with that. Whereas McCarthy's actually had better numbers. But this guy, he can't. But Bobby can't make anybody a good player. It doesn't matter. The offense looks as pedestrian as when Zach Wilson was there.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Okay, well, I would like to move on because the Jets make me sad. But
Yeah, me too.
I know. So let's talk about the Cardinals and Giants because they continue this trend of big time underdogs barking and making these upsets. Survivor is just obliterated at this point. Only 246 of the remaining 479 entries remain. 160 people chose the Seahawks, 86 people chose the 49ers. I, unfortunately, Michael, was one of the people who chose the Seahawks in my DraftKings contest. So I made it to week 5. I was part of the 4%. I can at least hang my hat on that. But I think 1.5% of the Circa Field remains now. And this might be the quickest ever the Survivor contest has ended. Yeah. But Cardinals,
there's no good team, Grace. There's no good teams. I mean, everybody thinks the Niners are a good team. Yesterday they lost their kicker. Moody decides to be a tough guy and try to tackle the guy, and he has a high ankle sprain. It cost him the game. And then Brock Purdy's running around back there. He's like trying to run around, and if he just plants and throws the ball, maybe he makes a play here or a play there. But once they lost their kicker, they had inability. They turned the ball over in the fourth quarter. And Arizona kept fighting. And because they didn't have a kicker, it became a lot easier for them to stay in it. Because when they got the ball back, the Niners are down 1, and they might as well have been down 7 because they had to score a touchdown if they're going to win the game. And, of course, then they got a tip ball and he turns it over. So I think they had 2 turnovers in the red zone, the Niners did. I mean, they've made, too many mistakes. Nobody's good enough to avoid the mistakes. I mean, last night, Pittsburgh has 3 turnovers and blocks a kick and still loses. How do you do that? You have 3 turnovers and block a field goal and block a kick, and you still can't win the game. So it's weird. It's just a weird year. And that's why I think because of all the parity, I think that's why the Survivor thing is out.
Right. There's been 9 underdogs of 7.5 points or more this season. They are 8-1 against the spread, 7-2 straight up. Okay, coming up next, do we have quarterback controversies in our hands between the Browns, the Raiders, and the Colts. We're going to break that down next on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle, where we are now getting into these quarterback controversies. And of course, the one on everyone's mind is Deshaun Watson in the Cleveland Browns. What the heck did they do after his miserable season and this expensive contract hanging over their shoulders? Deshaun Watson goes 15 for 28, just 125 yards and 1 touchdown in a 34-13 loss against the Washington Commanders. Head coach Kevin Stefanski saying, "We're not making a quarterback change, despite all the problems, Michael. What's next for them?"
Yeah. Well, they don't have a quarterback problem, Grace. They have a team problem. They have a culture problem. They have a lying problem. They have a confirmation bias problem. They have a problem like a lot of teams do. They don't want to admit a mistake. I mean, this is not a hard decision. Deshaun Watson is not an NFL quarterback. The best quarterback that was on the Cleveland Browns is now in Indianapolis, and Joe Flacco. He's the best quarterback in Indianapolis too. He was sitting on his couch in November last year, and he's the best quarterback on 2 franchises out of 32, which tells you something right there. This is not a hard decision. If Kevin Stefanski has any control over the roster, if he has any control, if he's going to accept the Coach of the Year trophy, that's what he's going to accept, and then he's going to put this kid back out there again. He's not really the Coach of the Year. They should give the award to the Haslam family, Andrew Barry, Paul DePodesta, whoever's making all these decisions behind the Iron Curtain here, because Stefanski clearly can't think that this guy can help him win a game. He can't. He can say all the right things after the press conference because that's what he's paid to do. That's what he got his new contract to do. They made him fire Alex Van Pelt. They didn't keep Bill Callahan in the house. They've had a horrible offseason in terms of that. Their defense has gotten worse, not better over the year. They couldn't stop anybody. Last year they were bad on the road. This year they're bad on the road and at home. But the issue here to me is it's a culture issue. The team knows that Watson sucks. They know he stinks. They know he can't complete a high school pass. Like, he's horrible. He can't check in the line. He's indifferent. He shows no emotion. He's exactly what happens to people that win the lottery. They don't care anymore. They just don't care anymore. There's no pride. I got all this money. Just let me, I'm sure when he gets to the sideline, he calls Bank of America to make sure his numbers are still looking good. Like, at some point, you got to win. You're paid to win. Mm-hmm. But they spoiled him. They gave him this incredible contract. Then they doubled down on the contract by guaranteeing his base salary this year to lower their cap. They pushed money into next year. Now, they gave themselves plenty of cap room, which they can carry over into next year. But they need a quarterback. And you say, well, what's their solution? They have no solution other than get rid of Watson. It's over. I mean, we had our man John on and, on the show, and he was screaming for it after week 1. I mean, it's really a comedy that they keep thinking that he's going to fix it. Now, look, he got sacked 7 times. I get that, but he has had one half of football in his Cleveland Brown career that's worthwhile. One half. Yesterday was the 5th game. He started 12 the last 2 years. That's 17 games. We have now a full season to evaluate Deshaun Watson. And it sucks. And it's not good. Mm-hmm. And it's so not good that anybody who has no experience in football could tell you it's no good. So when Kevin Stefanski stands there in front of the team and says he's our starter, what do you think they do? They laugh at him and say, Kevin, you ain't in charge of this team. Who's making the decisions? Upstairs is. See, I've lived this before. I've lived this when somebody above the coach tells the coach what to do. You basically neutralize the coach. You've neutered him.
So what should Kevin Stefanski say to his team? Just to keep their trust at this point, does he say, we're going to evaluate it week by week and maybe pretend like he's looking at some type of quarterback competition with Jameis Winston?
Everybody has a standard to play to. And if you don't play that standard, you don't play. It's not that complicated. You have a standard of excellence you have to play to, just like you do at work, I do at work. If you don't meet the standard, you're not going to be whether you're with VSiN or whether you're with the Cleveland Browns. You don't meet a standard of
Mhm.
excellence, you're not going to stay. I mean, that's the terrain of the world we live in a democratic society, in a free enterprise system. That's it. Nobody's entitled to anything. You're entitled to what you get in the contract, but you're not entitled to stay the starting quarterback. So unless you produce, unless you show progress, he can't get his teammates to believe in him. I can only imagine if this is the game, how bad the games are. How bad is practice?
Mm.
Practice must be a joke. Like if you're watching it and you're letting it happen, that you're just basically you're coaching it. And so when you stand in front of the team and say, we all have to do better. Well, if you don't make any changes, then nobody has to do any better. It doesn't really matter
Mhm.
how I play. I become the guy that, it's like, I don't really care if I have, I don't really, I got a lifetime contract, so I don't really care if I teach history. I'll just go to show up. I don't care about the kids. Nobody wants that mentality. Nobody likes that. And so this
Mhm.
is what you're tolerating. You're tolerating this. And I don't know what happened on the sidelines. There's a lot of speculation. He stayed on there. There was 16 seconds left on the play clock. I mean, Kevin covered his mouth so he couldn't be heard what he said. But the kid walked off the field, had really no interest. I mean, he was indifferent to the situation, but that's the way he's been indifferent since he's gotten there. I mean, he's spoiled by money. He's rich. He's rich. And they've taken away all his motivation. There's no anger. There's no hostility. The only thing he does with any excitement is signal a first down, which are few and far between.
I know. I think that situation was a little confusing, but one of the big NFL insiders confirmed today that it was 12 men on the field. So they would have taken a penalty either way, whether it was a delay of game or double timeout or what, keeping the 12 men. I don't know. It was an all around confusing situation there. But what I don't understand, Michael, is why is it so hard to get Jameis Winston out there? Because I said this on the morning show. He's a player's player. The locker room loves him. I mean, he's hilarious. He's
Right.
good at hyping everyone up. He can at least throw the deep ball, right? He'll get a completion over 10 yards. Maybe half of them will be interceptions, but at least it's going to be fun and entertaining.
Well, I mean, that's not why we do it, but I mean, at least you would hold the quarterback. There's no accountability. It's what the Jet players are saying. Look, if I don't have to play good, then why would I lose my job if the quarterback's not playing good and he keeps his job? Where's the accountability here? If the right guard sucks it off and he doesn't play good and he loses his job, what about the quarterback? Now, I'm not saying
Mhm.
all the Browns' problems are on Deshaun Watson, but most of them lay at his feet. So if you don't have any accountability, and so when you stand in front of that team on Wednesday and you say, here's how we're going to win, and you say, I've got full confidence in Deshaun Watson, who can't complete a high school pass, I mean, his numbers are just atrocious. They're just absolutely disgusting. I mean, there's no way you can win. I mean, I know that the other guy is really bad, right? I know the other guy is bad in terms of turning the football over, right? I know that. But
Mhm.
Flacco in this offense last year averaged 7.9 yards per attempt. 7.9. This year, Watson is averaging 4.8 yards per attempt.
Mhm.
You can't beat anybody at 4.8. You can barely get first downs on 3 passes. They're paying all this money to Cooper. He averages 10 yards a catch. They're paying all this money to Judy. He averages 11. They're paying all this money to Elijah Moore. They trade for him. He averages 8. I mean, no, they can't win like this. They can't score any points. They haven't scored more than 20 points all year. Like at some point, it's
Mhm.
either you are bad offense or your quarterback sucks. But if they put Winston in, they'll probably turn the ball over more. But I promise you, they'll be better than 18% on third down. I mean, they're
Mhm.
18% on third down. Like, how do you say that it's not the quarterback? Like, you're lying to people. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, I'm not saying you go with all the numbers on everything, but when you're 18% on third down, when you've only converted 12 third downs in an entire season after 5 games, then something's wrong with your third down package. It's either the players, coaches, or scheme, right? Well, I can't imagine that the scheme is that bad that you can't get more than 12 first downs. Fuck, Baltimore just got 14 first downs in the fourth quarter. You only have 12 for the whole fucking year, third down conversions. Think about that. Baltimore got 14 first downs in the fourth quarter. Cleveland's only converted 12 third downs. Cleveland only has 75, 76 first downs all year. 76. They play 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're the
I
only
mean,
team in
so
the
like it's
NFL to not score 20 points in a game yet this season. Think about all the sad offenses out there: Patriots, Dolphins, Raiders, Browns. The only one who haven't put up 20 points.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And yet you can't sit there and tell me it's everybody's job is safe. And you ask, how is this happening? It's happening because the people that paid the money for him believe in him. The reason that they fired Alex Van Pelt was because Deshaun complained it was the offense, right? The
Mhm.
reason they didn't sign Joe Flacco back. Like, how can you not even offer Joe Flacco a contract after he takes you to the playoffs? How can you show a man that kind of disrespect, right? I mean, that's just as disrespectful as anything you can do. And you don't even show him
Mhm.
that. You basically ignore him. And now all of a sudden he's the best quarterback in 2 cities. It's really comical.
Okay, well, you led right into it with Joe Flacco. He almost leads a comeback against the Jags. It's a 37-34 loss against the Colts, but Flacco goes 33 of 44 for 359 yards and 3 touchdowns. Despite the loss, you think they should keep Flacco out there when AR is healthy, or do we got a little controversy going on here?
Well, I think this is a little tougher problem. It's not a tough problem based on today. It's a tougher problem based
Mhm.
on tomorrow. Today, Joe Flacco's the best quarterback on that team. There's no question about that. You know, now look, at the end of the first half, that was a disaster, right? They got the ball back with 29. They get the turnover, they get it back, and they leave the right tackle by himself, and Walker strip sacks, and they get the field goal with 5 seconds to go in the half. I mean, once again, Shane Steichen trying to be overly aggressive to start the half, to end the half, and doesn't have protection and give up 3 free points. Nobody says a word. It's okay. Well, what do we care? Give up 3 points. How about managing the game? How about studying the game? You got your right tackle gets hurt. You're going to let somebody come in and just kill the pocket. So I think to me, but Richardson needs to play. I mean, let's be clear. Richardson needs to play, but he's not better than Flacco. If you have a sign in your draft room that says the best players are going to play, no matter where we draft them, or no matter how much we pay them, then Flacco's the quarterback, and Richardson should just sit and wait. Richardson should just sit and wait until Flacco's. It's not going to be long. I mean, how many more years is Flacco going to play?
That's a very valid point. All right, coming up next, more quarterback questions with the Steelers. We're also looking at the Bears offense. Caleb Williams had a nice start, and we're getting into our NFL awards.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSIN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle. Let's get into this Sunday night football game now. There was weather delay after weather delay. The team finally got out there, I think, at 9:45 Eastern. But during the locker room, Dak had told his team, this is going to be one to remember. And that's exactly what they made it, scoring the game-winning drive with 20 seconds left on the clock, capping off a 15-play, 70-yard drive to beat the Steelers 20-17. That game ending around 1 a.m. Eastern. What were your takeaways from this one, Michael?
Well, I mean, look, when you block a kick and you get 3 turnovers in your favor, you should win the game. But this is exactly kind of the ugly game that Pittsburgh wins. And when Dallas got the ball back with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and Pittsburgh had the lead 17-13, you think, well, this is exactly what Pittsburgh wants. They want to win the game with their pass rush. They want to win the game. Now, I don't know what happened to Nate Hebert, the 51, the outside rusher, who's really good, who took the place of Highsmith. So both Highsmith and Herbert were out. Herbig, I think it is, he were out. He's really a good player. He's an undervalued player. Nobody really talks about him, but he's really good. And he really complements TJ Watt really well. And he was given problems over on the left side to Guyton, the rookie, but he got hurt. I don't know what the injury was, but because they never said. Of course, guys come out of the game, they don't talk about unless it's the quarterback or the running back. But that really affected them down the stretch in the pass defense. And look, give Dak credit. I mean, he didn't play well at 2 red zone turnovers, but I thought he rallied. I think this is one of those games where, I mean, I was impressed with Dallas's mental fortitude, their ability to stop the run. I didn't think they could do that. I mean, they ran the ball 26 times. Pittsburgh did in the game for 92 yards. Their longest run was 8 yards. Got to give him credit for that. And then Justin Fields, when he has to be the thrower, right? When he has to make plays throwing the football, it's just not good enough. And
Mhm.
he missed some guys. He couldn't make any plays. I wouldn't be surprised if they went back to Russell this week just to give some more constant flow to their offense. And defensively, the Cowboys, for whatever reason, were able to find a run game. They ran the ball 31 times. They run it 31 times and they complete 29 passes. I mean, that's 60 rushes and completions. That means your execution is really good in this game. And you got to give them credit for it. I didn't see this one coming. Russo took this one in the contest. I was happy he lost because he got so goddamn lucky with his Baltimore pick. Not that I'm bitter, but I
Mhm.
really am bitter. Uh, but to me, this was a game that I was really impressed with. Not that I think Dallas is a great team. I think they have holes, but I think they're a
Mhm.
resilient team, and they showed great pride without Parsons, without Lawrence. On the road, hostile environment. The weather delay, and Dak was tough enough to forget about the interceptions and make the plays he had to make.
Right. That win was really important for the Cowboys, I thought, because their next six opponents are a combined 18-10. So if you're going to keep pace with the 4-1 Washington
Yeah,
Commanders, who are a live pick to win that division now, and I mean, even the Giants too, looking somewhat competitive. This was a big win for the Cowboys here.
yeah.
But
Well, I mean, look,
let's
look. I think to me is on the Cowboys I think this schedule look ahead thing is really based on this year, and I think you as a survivor victim here that got knocked out. I don't think that looking ahead the schedule does you any good because the upsets just are coming in running a like every week's hard. Like every
Hmm.
week is going to be a really hard game. I think that's the way we have to look at it. So whatever the records are, 18-10, it doesn't really matter because some of the 2 and 3 teams are probably better than the 3 and 2 teams.
That's fair. I mean, you do have to like categorize it somehow in your mind when you're projecting out these lines, right? And trying to make season predictions. I mean, because we are trying
Yeah.
to make winning bets here at the end of it.
Yeah.
But let's go to the Bears game because Caleb Williams probably had his best game as
Mhm.
a Bear. The Bears have now won 8 straight home games, which is the longest active streak in the NFL. Of course, it came against the worst team in the NFL, but what did you take away from the Bears in this one?
Well, I think it's great for Caleb. He's getting better. I mean, the level of comp wasn't very good, but I thought the kid, he
Yeah.
threw it only 29 times. He had 300 yards passing. They ran the ball 39 times. They didn't run it very well, but they were able to run it. I mean, they gave Swift 21 carries. So to me, I think that they found instead of the 50 pass games, they kind of found their identity. I think this Carolina franchise is a disaster. I'm going to keep saying it. It's not just Bryce Young, it's everybody in that building. I
Mhm.
mean, this is only going to get worse and worse and worse. They will have the first pick of the draft.
Mm. Caleb Williams, by the way, 4 for 4 on throws of 15 plus air yards after going 5 for 31 in his first 4 games. And that connection with DJ Moore is alive and well as well. 5 receptions, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both of those coming in the first half. So good things for the Bears there. Of course, they're in a very difficult division. The Packers also coming out of Sunday with a win against the Rams. Jordan Love kind of had a slow start to this game, but brought them back into it. What did you think of the Packers here?
I think they held on. I got text from Big Daddy saying it was going to be a disaster of a day, and he gave up in the first quarter. And like I just don't understand how he thinks every game's going to be easy for them to win. I thought it was a tough, resilient win. I mean, the Rams got the ball back with a chance to take the lead. When they're down 24-19, they could have drove down the field. I thought they did a great job. They're resilient. Look, it's hard to win on the road. It's hard to play great all the time. In the fourth quarter, the Packers had opportunities they couldn't cash in. But they did control the ball. They took some time possession away from the Rams. The Rams are just not a good team. They have no depth. Every week's going to be a struggle for the Rams. Every week will be a struggle because every week is hard. I mean, like every week is going to be a challenge because they just don't have enough depth, and these injuries just keep mounting. Now, hopefully, they'll get Cooper Kupp back and all that. They have a bye week this week, so they'll get into a bye, and hopefully, they get all those guys back.
By the way, Matt LaFleur now 5-0 as the Packers head coach against Sean McVay, and Green Bay is 10-1 in their last 11 games against the Rams, including the playoffs. What is the deal with this lopsided rivalry between LaFleur and McVay? What does LaFleur have on him?
Well, I think he just knows one thing is it's one of the things that you have to understand is the how and the why. How he sets up the game plan, but more importantly, why he sets up the game plan. How does he look at things and why does he handle it? So for me, I think that's one of the advantage. You know what the other guy's going to do. If you're playing a coach that you know, if you play a coach that you know, this is how he operates. This is what he wants to do. You know, John Gruden would do this and this coach would do that. And you know that. And so they're not going to change what they do. And so I'm sure Matt knows exactly how Sean wants to approach how to attack a defense. Here's what he's looking for. He's looking for this. He's looking for, where the corners are going, where the corners line up in the huddle before they break the huddle. If they stay on their side, they're probably going to not match to a receiver. If they're in the middle of the huddle, they're going to go find what receiver they match to. So he's looking for all those things to help his quarterback. And I think that certainly LaFleur knows that.
Mm. Let's also get the Dolphins Patriots in here. An
Oh,
ugly 15-10 win
well,
for Miami.
well,
They're
they're
2-3
happy
in
in
the
New
AFC.
England, though. But
Yeah.
everything's happy in New England. It's really lovely up there. It's perfect. I
Players
don't know if you've been
coach.
up there. Yeah, he's everything's happy. We're going to play wiffle ball today. I hope they have a good wiffle ball
Um,
game today. I'm sure that'll be really nice. And
How about kickball?
maybe if the day stretches a little longer, they could play a little kickball up there. That'd be perfect for them. Look, this was an ugly game to watch, and Miami's no better. Miami can't stick their chest out with pride. I mean, the Miami's a toe tap away from losing this game. That offensive line for the Patriots is a disaster, but so is that offensive line for Miami a disaster. They have a bye this week. I don't know. We don't know if Tua's coming back or not, but their defense isn't very good either. They gave up a big run to Stevenson. These are two poorly coached teams, I thought.
Hmm. Yeah, not much to look into in that game. Unless you were betting it, then good job, Miami backers. Let's get into your NFL Week 5 awards, though, with your DraftKings crowning moment.
Yeah, well, I thought that Baltimore's comeback behind win was really good. I think what they were able to do in that game to get 14 first downs in the fourth quarter is really somewhat remarkable. I think you have to give them credit for that, and they deserve a crown to win in Cincinnati and overcome two 10-point leads in the fourth quarter, control the ball 10
Mhm.
minutes in the fourth quarter, and still be behind by 10 points. They deserve the DraftKings crowning moment.
Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Yeah, it's nice to see Baltimore. They historically, or at least recently, are the ones giving up the big leads in the fourth quarter, but they turned the tables in that one. How about your fraud of the week, staying in that game?
I, Well, I think it's Baltimore and Cincy's defense. They're both frauds. I mean, Baltimore can't cover anybody. I mean, any good passer that plays Baltimore, watch out. Now, that's Jaden Daniels coming to town. Can they play good against him? Can they attack him? We'll see. They're 6.5-point favorites. That's a huge line to start off with. But this Baltimore pass defense, they can't adjust. They can't tackle very well. It's nothing like the Baltimore defense we're used to seeing. And Cincy's defense is atrocious. I mean, it's really
Mhm.
bad. I mean, all that talk about Lou Anarumo getting a head coaching job and how their defense has improved, it's really bad. I think a lot of it is how soft they are as an organization, and I think it affects their defense.
How about your Fred Palermo best game plan?
Well, I thought the Cardinals did a good job in terms of managing that game in the game, understanding they lost their kicker. I think they deserve credit. San Francisco gave away another game. This is two games they gave away, basically. The Minnesota game, Minnesota won the game, but losing to the Rams and losing to the Cardinals, two divisional opponents, not good for the 49ers. And they gave it to them. They didn't really earn it. They just gave it to them with their mistakes. And you got to give the Giants credit coming off a tough Thursday loss, going across the country, without their best receiver, and they were resilient. They played hard. They played fast. They made Geno Smith work for it. The game's going to go to overtime, and they did a great job on blocking the kick. Isaiah Simmons did the leap. So give them a ton of credit. I thought that they showed resiliency, which is what you're looking for with a team that's not very good. Are they quitting? Are they still going to play hard? And I think clearly they did.
On the Lamb?
Oh, I think all those coaching decisions, whether it's McDermott, Shane Steichen, Zach Taylor, but Zach Taylor needs to go on. I mean, Zach Taylor just, I can't even. It's so bad.
Okay, how about if you don't know, now you know?
I think if you don't know, the league is filled with a lot of mediocrity. There's no dominating team, and forget the records. That's why Survivor's been a disaster. Every week, just when you're handicapping, eliminate the record. Just look at the teams.
As fans, though, do we like this? Do we like this parody?
I do. I think it's fun. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
It's more entertaining,
I
right?
think everybody
That's
has.
what people
I think there's only a few that can go to the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean every team can't win on Sunday.
Right. All right. Well, this has been the GM's Shuffle. Thank you for listening. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your pods. We'll see you back here Thursday.